Report.
We are glad to announce billionaire and everybody's favorite, Donald Trump, has won the presidential elections.
We are going to make America so great again.
Donald Trump made his first visit to Washington.
People have been maced, and the police look like they're blocking them in.
No more Muslims.
These are people that nobody knows who they are.
We better be careful.
No more Mexicans.
We're going to stop it, and we're going to build a wall.
You have to come in to be an American.
They're troublemakers. They're no good. We've got to take our country back, folks.
Our job, no. Tell us, bitch, yeah, that's right. Speak American.
What is this? Look at this. Russian fucking passport.
Sign American. What are you doing here?
Yeah, man.
What are you doing here?
You're going to understand.
In America.
Your fucking neck, you're going to understand. Put your hand down. Burn up.
Outsider.
No more small breasts.
What do you want your world to look like? What do you want it to be? Do you know that the wall has two sides and nobody is free? Did your mama come from Mexico? Papa come from Palestine? Sneaking all through Syria, crossing all the borderlines. Let other people in. Listen to your women. Stop killing black children. Make America great again.
No more fat pigs.
Burn, pig! Keep going. Hey there. Let's dig it and push your head
Let other people in. Listen to your women. Stop killing black children. Make America great again.
Guilty. No more gay or lesbian.
Could you imagine a politician calling a woman a dog? Do you wanna stay in the kitchen? Is that where you belong? How do you picture the perfect leader? How do you want him to be? Has he promoted the use of torture and killing families? Did your mama come from Mexico? Papa come from Palestine? Sneaking all through Syria, crossing all the borderlines. Let other people in. Listen to your women. Stop killing black children. Make America great again.
Knock the crap out of them, would you?
Let other people in.
I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
Listen to your women. Stop killing black children. Make America great again.
We'll see you tomorrow.
And I love the women.
Did your mama come from Mexico? Papa come from Palestine? Sneaking all through Syria, crossing all the borderlines.
No more abortions.
Let other people in. Listen to your women. Stop killing black children. Make America great again. Let other people in. Listen to your women. Stop killing black children. Make America great again.
Sadly, the American dream is dead. I will bring it back. Bigger and better and stronger than ever before.
Trump will make America great again.
All right, welcome back to my video here. It is now 24 October, and this is going to be a couple of different videos. Each one's going to cover a different subject. This one's, of course, about Trump and the Russians, Russian intelligence specifically. The next one's going to be about Putin, and then Z and China, or Putin and Russian intelligence, and Z and China and Chinese intelligence, and then terrorist groups and stuff like that. And then the right wing in America and how they're being funded and aided by Russian and Chinese intelligence. So I should have done this video or started this series a couple years ago, but I kept believing in the system for some stupid reason that our democracy was strong and that our democracy and criminal justice system would flush down the toilet anybody who tried to destroy our democracy. But apparently I was incorrect. I admit now that I was wrong. That our democracy is very fragile. People that should be defending our democracy have been asleep at the wheel. So this is why people like Trump are able to get away with what they've been able to get away, and they're still out there after all the corruption, after all the fascist attitudes and breaking of laws. Trump's still running around walking free. So I'm gonna and everything that's come out about Trump that's completely factual and true has been thrown to the side and not taken seriously. So we're going to go over every criminal act, especially when it involves Trump being a traitor to the United States. We're going to go over that. And I'm going to start off this video, or these videos, with the same phrase every time. And this is a modification from Cato, who was a Roman senator that would start off every speech in the Roman Senate that I tell you here today, that Carthage must be destroyed. And he said this every single day that he made a speech until Carthage, the enemy of Rome, was finally destroyed. And so what I'm going to say is the same thing, but with the modern modifications. And here it goes. It's make democracy and freedom great again. In order to do that, Trump must go to prison. Putin must be overthrown and Russia free. China must be overthrown and free. Iran must be overthrown and free. North Korea must be overthrown and free. Hamas and Hezbollah must be destroyed. Or the alternative is, if we don't accomplish these goals, freedom and democracy will be destroyed. So we're at the point where we have one of two choices. We can either go backwards into fascism, communism, dictatorships, and anti-democratic forces will take over, or we can move forward with expanding democracy all around the world and freedom all around the world. And we are in the death throes, okay? This is where the dictators and the fascists and the communists fight back to the death. So let there be no illusions. We are in a death struggle. We're in a fight to the death. I happen to believe we will win if only we focus on the task at hand. And that task is to make mankind free, to spread democracy across the world. We can't no longer continue with democracy as a sacred special commodity only held by certain countries and certain peoples. If we really believe in freedom and democracy, we must overthrow these undemocratic forces around the world. And they fight back. We've seen them fighting back over the last few years, and they did a really brilliant fight back and coup by supporting Trump, aiding Trump, and pushing along Trump and dividing America. Okay? Spreading misinformation, spreading division in America, division amongst our NATO allies. All that we've seen the last few years with Trump and all the things that he's done all comes from the bowels of the basement of Russian and Chinese intelligence. Okay? And I'll show you how that works through my videos here. Alright, so we're going to get in this section, we're going to talk about Trump and the Russians and his Russian connections, how he's basically was saved by the Russians back in the 80s, or late 80s, early 90s when he went bankrupt. And ever since then, Trump, who started off as a beholding to the KGB, and then the SVR, and now Putin. And Trump has been propped up, and basically where Trump gets his money is from the Russian oligarchs that are support Putin. They bring their money over through real estate, through all his scams. We've been seeing all this in the news, and the funny thing about the news is they only cover the top surface, but they never dive very deep. Why is Trump buildings always so overvalued? Why is Trump's real income and net worth always way overvalued? The reason why is because it's been inflated to cover his Russian money laundering. Okay, the Russians bring over, Russian oligarchs, they bring over their money because it's a good investment in the United States. Trump sells that, they set up fake corporations in the Cayman Islands, they set up LLCs in New Jersey with Trump's attorney Cohen in these blind trusts. Trump sells them a way overvalued piece of property that maybe is worth $5 million. He sells them to him for $10 million. They hold on to that and then resell it later at a loss, and they've laundered their money. All the dirty money they had, now it's been laundered, it's all legitimate, and they get cash into their international bank accounts. Trump then takes that property and writes it off as a loss, because he'll say, yeah, I bought it for $10 million, but, you know, it's really in actuality only worth about $5 million. So I had to overpay for that property. Hold on one second. So this has been a complete scam. This is why Trump doesn't pay taxes, because if you declare a loss every year, okay, you can write that loss off on your taxes, on the money, your income coming in. It reduces your income to nothing or negative, so you don't pay taxes, or you actually get money back from the government. So Trump has been completely involved, completely blackmailed. He was blackmailed twice at a hotel with prostitutes and drugs, completely videotaped. The Russians have him by the balls. This is exactly what the Steele documents talk about. We'll get into that. But the Russians have had Trump in their pocket since the early 1990s. And they brought out Trump, and you'll even hear Trump say it himself. Well, why would I want to give up a great show? I'm making millions of dollars, one of the most popular TV shows, The Apprentice. Why would I want to give all that up to be hounded and harassed by the news media if I ran for president? Because people were asking him. And then what do we see? We see Trump run for president. Putin's greatest enemy was Hillary Clinton, and he did everything he could to defeat her, and it worked. You remember before Trump, it was supposed to be Jeb Bush. Everyone was talking about Jeb Bush running against Hillary. That was the setup. And then out of nowhere, in about the spring of 2015, Trump gets in the race, and it's a shit show ever since then. And when you think about Russian intelligence and Chinese intelligence, their goals aren't to defeat America, although that would be nice. Their goals aren't to have Chinese troops and Russian troops marching down Pennsylvania Avenue. Their goals are to keep America confused and fighting amongst ourselves and out of their hair. Because for Putin, his world are the republics of the former Soviet Union and also the former Russian satellites of Poland, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, places like that, but also the former Soviet republics of Estonia, Lithuania, Ukraine especially, Georgia, Armenia, places like that. That's where he wants to have control. And how he does that is he espouses, just like Hitler did, wherever there's a Russian minority in one of these countries of the former Soviet Union, that's where he's trying to incorporate back into Russia, because he knows that Russia demographic bomb is ticking. Russia is on a timeline for destruction. Most Russian males don't live past 50. The birth rate in Russia is going down. The growth rate for the population is negative, and has been negative for many years. We've seen in Russia the population increased only a little bit, and that's because they've created these programs to get Russians to come out of these former Soviet republics and come back to Russia. There are whole villages in Russia and Siberia that are just populated by elderly people or have been completely abandoned. So he realizes that they're on the downtrend. And so what he's trying to do is to stave that off and create like a Russian rump state of ethnic Russians to hold out. That's why he's going into Ukraine. That's why he's going into Georgia. And that is Putin's goal. So Putin, in order to accomplish this, you can't have an active America that's active like they were in Ukraine. So all this happened in Ukraine in 2014, and that's when Putin took the gloves off and decided to create chaos in the United States, division in the United States. So we're so caught up with fighting each other and dysfunctional, and you see that even today. They can't even elect a goddamn speaker to the House, and Putin sits over in the Kremlin and completely laughs at our dysfunction, because democracy, as great as it is very vulnerable to disruption. It's not a dictatorial system where, it's at the will of one person. We have to agree on certain things amongst each other, and that causes chaos, and that can be easily disrupted. And that's what we see going on. Russian intelligence, Putin, Chinese intelligence has completely studied American democracy. They found our weaknesses and our flaws, and they're completely exploiting them, which is exactly what we would do. We would study a country and figure out their weaknesses and flaws and completely exploit them. The tables have been turned. We're the victims now. And so that's what you see. And the same thing with China. China wants to influence and expand in the South China Sea and to reabsorb Taiwan. And they don't want the American 7th Fleet involved. That's why we see what happened with this, what was this guy's name? Fat Nichols, or whatever this guy's name was, that completely blackmailed all these admirals and ship commanders in the Pacific Fleet to disrupt the complete Pacific Fleet officer corps. It was a Chinese operation. Fat Leonard, that was the guy's name, Fat Leonard. And we saw that Fat Leonard faked his illness, was under house arrest, escaped down to Mexico, flew down to Venezuela, and was on a plane back to Russia when he was caught and sent back to the United States. And they've been very, very quiet about it because there were admirals that were blackmailed, sexually blackmailed. Exactly what the Russians did to Trump through prostitutes and drugs and parties. Whole commanders of ships and submarines in the Pacific Fleet were completely blackmailed, to the point that even Fat Leonard knew when and where the ships would be, so he could send his resupply ships to supply the ships. And of course, they were probably bugs put onto the ships to track them, and all that information was sold back to the Chinese and back to the Russians. Because anything that the Chinese get, the Russians are definitely going to get. So we see these different operations. We see the whole QAnon disinformation campaign that went on, with Ron Watkins, was a complete Chinese asset, completely blackmailed and used by the Chinese and the Russians. We saw that the QAnon post all started right around the same time that a PBS documentary came out about Putin and his motivations in Ukraine, and that the same people that were interviewed in the Putin files were attacked by QAnon within days after this documentary. So the great thing about the Russian intelligence is they're so smart that their influence is felt around the world, but you don't know it's them. They use third parties, contractors, and that's the great thing about an intelligence operation, is if you can have the influence you want, but it doesn't track back to you. But the thing you must always remember about all intelligence operations is, if you look at an intelligence operation, who does it benefit? That's the main question you always have to ask. When there's disruption and chaos in American democracy, who does that benefit? The logical suspects are Russia, specifically Putin, and China. And then you have to make the linkages, and that's where the confusion sets in. Because the Russians are very good at covering their tracks. They're very good at using third parties. We're going to see where Trump, and I'll do it like this. There's Trump, And whenever he wants to get information back to the Russians, it's always through his attorney Cohen or one of his sons or son-in-laws, and those go through another, usually European third party that just happens to be pro-Russian or knows someone in Russia or a Russian business, and then that Russian business is connected to another either former Russian intelligence officer or current Russian intelligence officer, which goes up the chain all the way back to Putin. So that's how it works, and we're going to see time and again and again and again after associate of Trump being manipulated. You see all the first persons involved inside the Trump White House were all Russophiles, all had one connection or another to people involved in Russian intelligence. It was amazing. So we're going to get into this and we'll show you how that works. All right.
Would you denounce what happened in 2016, and would you warn him to never do it again?
All I can do is ask the question. My people came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be. I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. And what he did is an incredible offer. He offered to have the people working on the case come and work with their investigators with respect to the 12 people. I think that's an incredible offer. The probe is a disaster for our country. I think it's kept us apart.
You see, almost everything Trump says completely betrays how he's been compromised by the Russians. Okay? Saying that he spoke with Putin and Putin strongly denied it. I mean, come on. Come on. Well, let's give us a break. Let's not be naive. There's no way that Putin is going to admit, oh yeah, it was us. What are you going to do about it? And then I love this point he just makes here, that Putin has offered to send over the Russian intelligence guys, probably who committed the crime, to work with our investigators so they can get the inside information and find out what we're investigating and infiltrate the investigation. And then you see Trump throw the intelligence and law enforcement agencies under the bus and saying, oh, all of this is completely divisive for the United States. I mean, my God. That's completely ridiculous. Talk about, I mean, the thing that especially the MAGA, the poor Republican MAGA people just completely don't understand is how they've been studied. Russian intelligence knows everything about them and is using their sense of patriotism to turn it back on them and to manipulate them. And that's exactly what we've seen. Trump is their man. He's turned all these things. I mean, can you imagine Ronald Reagan talking about being pro-Russian, pro-Soviet? It's ridiculous. Russia is the enemy. America is the enemy number one, always, to Russia. Okay? It doesn't matter how many resets we do. It doesn't matter what they say. The United States is the number one enemy to Russia. And you think about it. Our military budget, $600 billion up to over, probably more like over $1 trillion a year in military spending. And Russia 600 billion, 1/10 of what we spend. Okay? But yet, see, they can be more focused because they're working on just their area. We're covering the whole world. But to Russia, the United States is Goliath and they're David. So anything you can do to disrupt Goliath makes it easier for David to throw his rock. Okay? And so if you can get a beehive and open it up and smash it on Goliath's head, that causes confusion and chaos and gives David a one-up to go after Goliath. Anyway, we'll keep going with this horrible video.
Kept us separated. There was no collusion at all. Everybody knows it.
As to who is to be believed and to who is not to be believed.
And when Trump says there was no collusion, that's a complete lie, because all through and before, through, and after the Russian campaign, the Trump campaign, Trump used his Russian contacts, the people inside the Trump organization, to contact the people that were in Europe that were in contact with Russian intelligence all throughout the entire campaign. We see Roger Stone and Cohen are all communicating with the Russians about these Hillary files. The Russians are actively trying to help Trump, and then they're telling the Trump campaign, we're actively trying to help you. And then they're explaining to them, I believe it was to Trump's son, what they found on Hillary. And then you even see Trump in the summer of 2016 going on TV and saying, Russia, if you're listening, maybe you can find some of those 35,000 emails that Hillary deleted. So Trump was even taunting them about it, okay? Now, except for Helsinki, Trump and Putin weren't on the phone every damn day. But that's not the way a mafia organization works. You've got the head Don, you got his lieutenants, his capieri, his street thugs. They send them out, they pass their messages to the other family's street thugs. It works its way back up to the head of that family, and they're either working together or they're at war. And that's exactly the way it worked here. Trump would like you to think that he was in total control and total, not working with the Russians or for the Russians. But everyone knows that in every action, Trump was actively working with the Russians and to thwart any investigation of the Russians the best that he could. I mean, with Comey and Trump tried to influence Comey into ending the investigation into the Russian influencing of the 2016 campaign. So much so that Comey had to go home and write it all down because he was so disturbed by the conversation that Trump had with him. And then you see later on, when Comey wouldn't drop the investigation, they found an excuse to get rid of Comey. And how in the world MAGA Republicans could be turned against the intelligence community, against the military intelligence community, against the law enforcement community of the United States, just shows you how successful the Russian campaign was. That, probably 90% of military intelligence, the U.S. intelligence, U.S. law enforcement votes Republican or are conservatives. But yet, somehow, to the Russian campaign with Trump was able to get them to believe they were working with the liberals and with Hillary. Completely outrageous, completely ridiculous, completely delusional. Anyway, we'll keep going.
You can trust no one if you take this. Where did you get this idea that President Trump trusts me or I trust him? He defends the interests of the United States of America, and I do defend the interests of the Russian Federation. We should be guided by facts. Could you name a single fact that would definitively prove the collusion? This is utter nonsense.
What happened to...
Yeah, we can, definitely. Well, there's Gummy Bear, and there's, what was the other one? Fancy Bear. And they were run out of the Internet Research Agency, okay? And they started hacking the DNC computers, okay, within days after Roger Stone and Trump Jr. contacting, we'll get into this guy later, this person who was in contact with Russian intelligence, okay, within days they're hacking the computer, and then they're communicating with Roger Stone and Trump Jr. about the information that they found. And Gummy Bear and Fancy Bear were found to be products of the Internet Research Agency, which was headed by Brzezinski, who was Putin's chef, the head of the Wagner Group, which is sort of like a outsourced intelligence and a Russian warfare company that works for Russian intelligence around the world. And he was good friends with Putin until he had a psychosis in the Ukrainian war and went after Putin and rebelled, and then went to Belarus and then died mysteriously in this plane crash. So, yeah, there is connections. So, when Putin says shit like that, there's all kinds of connections.
The server. What happened to the servers of the Pakistani gentlemen that worked on the DNC? Where are those servers? They're missing. Where are they? What happened to Hillary Clinton's emails? 33,000 emails.
Yeah, we all remember that, and he makes great hay of that. So what happened, the guy who just tried to run for House Speaker and couldn't make it, Jim Jordan, went on a fishing expedition, okay? Hillary was a workaholic. She brought her work home. Naively, she would emails from her State Department secure server or computer to her computer at home, and that computer had been looked over by the State Department and secured, okay? But also inside that server, on those emails, she also had personal emails to her family, to her daughter, to friends. Hey, yeah, we're going to meet you at 5 o'clock to go to lunch. All these kinds of things. And so when Jim Jordan went on his fishing expedition about Benghazi, which went absolutely nowhere, trying to prove, and that was all set up to rubble the field ahead of Hillary's presidential campaign in 2016, and you saw it worked. And they found nothing, but of course it doesn't matter when you have people sitting on the fence. Well, there's smoke, there's got to be fire, right? Hillary went in with her State Department technician and said, okay, anything that's not related to the State Department is personal. I want all that removed from this computer because I don't want the Republicans going through my personal emails about my personal business, which he has every right, okay? Every right. Nobody, not even the FBI, can go into your fucking computer and start rifling around and going to your emails and look at your pictures without a warrant, without just cause. And Jim Jordan was using this for political cause. Because just like what he did with Hunter Biden's computer, you know, they used all of that for personal reasons. All right.
Gone, just gone. I think in Russia they wouldn't be gone so easily. I think it's a disgrace.
Does the Russian government have any compromising material on President Trump or his family?
I called him a competitor, and a good competitor.
And see, nothing happened. Nobody follows up on that. Nothing. They just skip to the next section.
He is. And I think the word competitor is it's a compliment. I think that we will be competing when you talk about the pipeline. I'm not sure necessarily that it's in the best.
And there you go again. You know, this is back in 2017, and we saw everything that Russia does, whether it's cultural exchanges or economic pipelines, are used to the benefit of Russia. Okay? They gained influence in Europe, another point of basically dividing NATO, prying Europe away from America and American influence is by using gas. They could flood Europe with cheap gas, and they use that pipeline to do that through Gazprom. Okay? And one of the proofs of this is that one of the former prime ministers of Germany, Erhard Schroeder, was on the board of Gazprom. And then we see this war go on, how when the gas gets cut off, it divides Europe, because now the gas prices have completely skyrocketed in Europe because the gas has been cut off. So everything the Russians do is an economic weapon.
Best interests of Germany or not, but that was a decision that they made.
And it wasn't.
Russia is a democratic state, and I hope you're not denying this right to your own country. You're not denying that United States is democracy. Do you believe United States is a democracy? And if so, if it is a democratic state, then the final conclusion in this kind of a dispute can only be delivered by a trial.
And there you go. If you believe that Russia is a democratic state, I got some swampland in Florida. Okay? Because, see, this is complete Putin. The lie is the truth. Black is white. White is black. Confusion. You got a Russian intelligence KGB officer who spent his life lying and building on lies, talking about Russia being a democracy. If Russia is a democracy, why are they locking up journalists? If Russia is a democracy, why are they locking up and assassinating people that speak out against Putin?
Mr. President, I'll give this ball to you, and now the ball is in your court.
Huh. You see?
That's very nice. That will go to my son Barron. We have no question. In fact, Melania, here you go.
Yeah, you see? All symbolic. The ball is now in Trump's court. I've blackmailed you. I've given you your mission. Now go forth and produce. And what does he do? He produces, causing chaos, division. He's still doing it. 6 years later, he's not even president. And he's still causing chaos. Still causing chaos. All these charges against Trump, 90 different charges. If it was you or me, we would have been in jail a long time ago. But because it's Trump and he has the money, he can delay. He's 77 years old, you know. And then he's trying to say presidential immunity. Bullshit. You know. And then just recently, Sidney Powell turned on him, and this other guy just turned on him. So it just goes on, and that's the whole point. The chaos and division while we're fighting each other, while we're fighting over Trump, okay, we're not focused on what's happening in Russia and Ukraine and the South China Sea and what China is doing. Because we're in such chaos, turning on each other, because every fool knows the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And if you can help that person fight your enemies, then they don't have to fight you, or you don't have to fight them. All right, we'll keep going. And this is from 7 years ago, 6 years ago.
This new DOJ report on the origins of the Russia probe has uncorked all kinds of pieces of evidence and news, and here's one that hasn't gotten much attention but bears down on one of the most salacious things ever rumored about Donald Trump, which is really saying something. Those unverified rumors that maybe he could be blackmailed by Putin over a tape of activities that either did or did not occur in a Moscow hotel. We have news on this tonight. Now let's remember how it all started, morphing from a kind of political intrigue to at times a national joke.
All eyes on a breaking news story involving the president-elect Donald Trump and an allegation of compromising intelligence in the hands of the Russians.
Donald Trump didn't seem to care much about Russian election meddling, but cared a lot about Russian prostitutes. Oh my God, it's real.
It's soaked in history. It just washes over you.
But here's the thing. For all the talk about this alleged tape, I bet you've heard about it, virtually no evidence came forward in public to corroborate it. It sounded like gossip drawn from this unverified dossier, which, remember, wasn't drafted for public consumption, let alone fact-checked. Now,
all right, so let's go over this, okay? So this is an old statecraft perfected and used everywhere by Russian intelligence. It's called compromat. And so what you do is you research your target, okay? You figure out his weaknesses. So you got a little thing for little boys. It's got a little thing for little girls, for drugs, for prostitutes, for money. You find his weakness or her weakness. And then you set up a situation where that weakness intersects with that target, the mark. And what the Russians have been doing, and they've been doing this all the way back, God, even before World War II. They would invite their marks, their targets, to Russia on a all-expense-paid, free hotel, free food business conference. They'll set up these fake business conferences. They'll have a speaker, and then they'll invite people from all over the world to come to Russia. And the whole point is, out of 100 people, maybe 10, 20 of them are the marks. free hotel rooms, free food, free airfare, all these things. This is what they did to Trump. And they do this to prominent people in America and Europe, European business, even Japanese, Africans, and they'll set them up with whatever their weakness is. In this case, it was prostitutes. And everybody knows about Trump and, you know, this island that he would go out and fly out to and get compromised there with other teenagers. So he had a reputation that was already known, okay? Because, again, Russian agents, they use contractors. In this case, they use prostitutes. Maybe prostitutes that are sitting in jail in Moscow City Jail, and the police come to them and say, hey, there's a way you can get released and get out of this. We got a guy here you want to talk to, or wants to talk to you, and see if you can assist yourself to get out of this circumstance. And that's what they do. These prostitutes, they tell them, hey, we're going to have this individual come to this room. You're going to come to the door, knock on the door, do whatever, get them in a compromising position, get it all on tape. And it's all going to be on tape. And once you do that, all the charges against you will be dropped. This is standard. The U.S. does this. The U.S. intelligence does this. Everybody does this around the world. Chinese intelligence. This is what happened to Ron Watkins with QAnon, how he got compromised in China through sexual compromise. And they did this to Trump back in the 80s and most recently in 2003. Okay? Now, with the Steele dossier, Steele was a former MI6 intelligence officer. He was retired now, working on the open market and working for this private company, intelligence company. Cambridge Analytical, I believe. And so what they do, Cambridge does two types of things. They'll do an intelligence background check on the client. So what they'll do is they'll say, okay, tell us everything that you got. We're going to go back and research it, because if we can find it, they can find it. And then this is how you deal with it. So they did an intelligence assessment on Hillary, and this is where they came back and said, this is where your problems lie, and this is what you can do to cover it or distract from it. Usually it's mostly always distraction. And so on top of that, they also did one on Trump. Now, this first was actually done by Jeb Bush. He's the first one that was approached by Cambridge Analytical by Jeb Bush. He started paying for it, then he stopped. When Hillary came and got the one done on herself, they told her we'd started already an intelligence assessment of Trump with Jeb Bush being paid for. Would you like to see the rest of it? And she did, and well, where's the rest of it? And well, we haven't finished it yet. So that's when they hired Steele to go out. And what Steele does is, being an intelligence officer for 30 years, he had built contacts inside Russian intelligence. People that were either still there or retired. And all he did was go back and check with those intelligence operatives inside Russia about Trump and find out what he could about them. This is standard practice in all intelligence networks, whether it's the CIA or the FBI. You go through and talk to people. You pay them money, and they tell you what they know. Now, you can't always believe everything they say, because people are talking to you for money. Okay? So, you take what they say, and then you try to confirm it with other intelligence sources that are coming at it from a different angle for the same mark, I guess you could say. And that's how you confirm these things. And we see this with the Hunter Biden memos, that in the Hunter Biden memo, you've got this Ukrainian who says he heard this and said somebody told him this and somebody told him that. Yeah, we paid Biden $5 million, $10 million, and is supposed to influence his father. But none of it's true. It's just people boasting about bullshit that they heard, and people make up shit and inflate things that they hear so they can get paid more. Sometimes some of it's true. If you can compromise it with second and third sources, it's great, it's true. Not all these FBI memos and intelligence sources are completely true. A lot of times, I'd say in my experience, probably 75% of the information is true. And that's the rub. You got to figure out what of that 25%, what is the 25% that isn't true. Okay? And then the problem that the FBI and that the news media had with all these sources of steel is that none of them were named. Well, of course they're not named. You can't name a source or he'll be dead the next day. Okay? I mean, to sit here, which is what this guy is about to say, and say, oh, it's on unverified sources and, compromised sources and, you can't name the source or the source will be dead the next day. I mean, come on, people. So, these sources are not meant for legal cases that go to trial, okay? That sit in front of jury pools and have them listen to it. These are intelligence sources bringing information. And then you try to you try to confirm these with either your signet or your human or other sources or through other intelligence agencies confirming the same thing. So this is why a lot of these things are not substantiated and not believed. And the FBI is never going to stick their neck out and say, yeah, we totally buy this story, because they have no confirming information. So they're going to deny the story. They're going to say the story isn't confirmed, but they're never going to say we confirmed it, or they're going along with it. So this is what you have here. So let's just understand how this all works. Like I said, you have rumors that you go by, third-party information that you go by, until you can try to confirm it. Now, when it comes to national security, if you've got an intelligence source that says, yeah, Putin has decided to launch his missiles to hit Washington and London on October 25th at 7 p.m., that's going to raise an alert that you're going to try to compromise or confirm, through other means. Are the NRO satellites showing the doors have opened up on the missile silos? Is there troop movement? Is there radio communication between Home Command in Moscow and those radio silos? Have mobile launchers started moving out of their bunkers and into their launch positions in the woods? That's how you confirm those things. That's what those sources are like. Okay? And that's the crazy thing about intelligence, is that 25% is always ambiguous, and you never know for sure whether it's real or not real. So in the FBI's position and the news media's position, if you can't name the sources and take those sources and their testimony to trial and convict Trump in a trial, then they throw it out or they don't confirm it. But it's funny because the news media will run with the story if they can get one or two other sources to confirm something that's come out. And how many times has the news media had to step back and say, hey, this wasn't correct, or we got wrong information, or with additional information we found out confirmed something else. But in the 3-day 72-hour media cycle, you rarely ever see those corrections. Anyway, here we go.
Now what's new? The DOJ report detailing the dossier claimed the Russians had this file on Trump's alleged sexual activities that occurred allegedly while in Russia, and this alleged tape of him with allegedly prostitutes at a presidential suite at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Moscow. That's a major claim. Just releasing it can really hurt a public figure, and none other than James Comey went and presented the claim to Trump, stating it was unverified, and then, far less defensively, Mr. Comey, after leaving government, went public with that story in his book and on his book press tour.
I'm about to talk to him about allegations that he was involved with prostitutes in Moscow and that the Russians taped it and have leverage over him. I did not go into the business about people peeing on each other. And he interrupted, started talking about it. Do I look like a guy who needs hookers? I didn't answer that, and then I just moved on.
Now, today at the hearing, Lindsey Graham brought up how the report debunks the idea this tape ever existed.
Trump's alleged sexual activities at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Moscow was rumor and speculation. In the report, it suggests that a Western employee of the Ritz-Carlton confirmed this escapade by then private citizen Trump. When he read that, he says, that's not true. I never told Steele that somebody working for the Ritz-Carlton confirmed this. I heard it at a bar.
And the report notes this dossier, while it had many things that were true, also misstated and exaggerated sections of reporting, and that Trump's alleged sexual activities, which was stated at one point as potentially confirmed in the dossier, was not, as you just heard there, sources telling the FBI the Moscow.
All right. So we're going to get into this Steele dossier later on, but it's one thing to have one intelligence source tell you something. And I'll get real specific of what these intelligence sources are, okay? So you've got people in Russian intelligence, okay, that are running this operation against Trump, okay? Very, very small group of people. And then you'll have maybe someone who sees the video, a technician, or someone who transcribes the video, or someone who types up the transcription and sees this. And then they'll mention it to a buddy of theirs at a bar, or a relative, or someone else in the Russian intelligence community. And then that person retires. And then they just happen to have been one of the sources that Steele used when he was in MI6. And as Steele goes around and questions his sources, about 100 of them, from what I understand, to ask them if they know anything about Trump's sexual activity being compromised in Russia, one would say, yeah, I had heard from a former friend of mine who was an intelligence operative in a unit that did that, that said that they had compromised Trump at the Ritz-Carlton. That's pretty fucking specific. And another thing that confirms a lot of these things, and this is how you find out if something is true. If you go to 100 different sources, which is what he did, and 15 of those sources say they heard information, or 30 of them, I believe, is what the amount was, that had heard the same story, and out of those 30, 20 of them say, yeah, it was so-and-so suite in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, Moscow. And they all say the same hotel and the same suite. You pretty much can confirm that's probably fucking true. Okay? Because you got different people that are not connected to each other that mention the same hotel and the same suite. 20 to 30 people. That's almost impossible statistic to make up. That's how you confirm something's true. The location, I mean, because how many hotels could there be in Moscow? Hundreds. Why wouldn't Trump just bring drugs back? Why wouldn't Trump, one of them, just make it up and say, oh yeah, Trump was in a room with a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old girl? Why wouldn't another one say, you know, he was in a room with an 8-year-old boy? No, they all said the same thing. That Trump was in a hotel room in the Ritz-Carlton, in the guest suite, with Russian prostitutes, and they peed on him. And they all came back with the same story. That's how you confirm something is true or not. Could you take that to a court of law in the United States and convict Trump on whatever? Probably not. But if it got to Comey and he was able to confirm it himself, I'd say it's probably damn true. All right, we'll keep going.
Hotel story was, quote, rumor and speculation. You hear a lot about facts these days. This may have been a small matter, but it got a lot of attention. And this is a part of the DOJ report people need to...
And what's so funny is that the same people who defend Trump against this and say it's all rumor and speculation are the same ones that think that, I mean, almost the exact same people who think that Obama was born in Kenya, that Michelle Obama is a man, that Hillary eats children's faces and drinks their blood. All this kind of bullshit. But yet, when it comes to facts about Trump, it's all rumor and speculation.
To reckon with.
And another thing, too, is if you have a news organization, you have to say these things are rumor and speculation because you want to be in business tomorrow.
Was no verification. Mr. Comey was out over his skis in public at least, and in fairness to those involved, the dossier didn't seem to have perfect sourcing on this very unverified claim, and we want you to know the facts. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere.
Yeah, there you go. All right, on to the next one. And so, how it started was that Trump was compromised by the Russians. Okay? Long before he became president. And then he was run. Okay, so let's start off. Trump was compromised in the 80s, or the 90s, by the Russians, recompromised at the Ritz-Carlton in 2003 by Russian intelligence, then brought out as Putin's trump card against Hillary because the Russians had done the assessment and figured it out that Hillary would have beat Jeb Bush in 2016. And Putin blamed Hillary for his loss in Ukraine. And let's just get down to it and make it really simple. All of this about Trump is all about Ukraine. It's always been about Ukraine. They took over Crimea. They took over Donbass in 2014 after the Putin's dictator oligarch in Ukraine was thrown out in 2013, 2014. And he blamed Hillary for that because they had gotten some tapes of State Department employees that were supposedly helping the revolutionaries. They were just passing out sandwiches, and from there on, and then from emails they had about Hillary trying to get involved in Libya, and Libya had a lot to do with Putin's paranoia. He watched that video of Gaddafi getting killed, and he didn't want that happening to him. And it's bad enough it was happening in Libya. It was bad enough that Syria almost got overthrown and Assad got thrown out. But then it happened right next door in Ukraine, and that was too much. And that's when he sent in the little green men, and they took over Crimea, and they took over Donbass. But it was more than just that. They went on the offensive. No longer were they going to allow the West to encroach into Russia. Russia would encroach into American democracy. And that's what he did. He held out his Trump card. Trump said he didn't want to run for president. Why should I run for president? Because I got such a great thing going on here with The Apprentice. He didn't want to run. He even said it while he was running. But he didn't have a choice. He was running because he was told to. Okay? So that's how it started. That Trump was compromised by the Russians, being run by the Russians to cause chaos, division inside of America, so Putin could win back Ukraine and influence more of the former Soviet republics. As long as we were in chaos and fighting each other, and of course this is what QAnon was all about, was to cause division. It's a multi-front attack. Trump, QAnon, all these things were all multi-front attacks launched by Russian intelligence on the orders of Putin. And then how did it end? It ended with Trump handing over intelligence to the Russians midway through. Trump kowtowing to the Putin at Helsinki, having that special conference with not even the translators in the room. And then it ended in chaos, and Trump having his people pull classified documents about our nuclear capabilities and bringing it down to Mar-a-Lago, where anybody could walk in 24 hours a day and rifle through the documents. And the majority of the classified documents were about America's nuclear strategies and capabilities, which is exactly what the Russians would be interested in. I'm so amazed that Trump is not in prison right now. If it had been you or me with one document, we would all be in prison. They just caught another guy trying to, sell a document to somebody, one document, and he got arrested immediately, never let out, and now he's going his way to prison. But Trump had hundreds of classified documents. He's compromised, and what these documents, they've been very quiet about it, but I've been reading about it. And essentially what these documents are game plans, strategy plans. Because when a war starts, and a nuclear war starts, you've got 30 minutes or an hour to counterattack. We don't have time to sit on the phone and say, okay, you guys go here, you guys launch that, you guys go there. So what the military has done has created scenario A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z. If Russia does this, we will do that. If China does this, we will do that. If Russia goes into here, we're going to do this. And Miley would have all those, General Miley would have all those plans and know about them and be ready. So if, God forbid, a war ever happened, Miley could get on the phone and say, okay, this is Crystal Palace. We're going for attack plan Z. And everybody at every base, every commander would know what attack plan Z would be and what their job was to be. Okay? And so what these documents that were found is they go through those plans. If Russia does this, we will do that. This is why they don't talk about it. Because it's almost impossible to try Trump on this, because you'd have to bring out this information in a trial, and that would expose it to our enemies, what all our plans are, which they already know now. So this was Putin's plan all along, was to compromise the United States defenses and to find out what our attack plans were and to compromise our attack against Russia, our counterattack. So Russia knows that with their aging missile fleet, that for every 10 missiles, well, we'll say this. For every 10 missiles they launch, maybe only 75%, if that, 70% get out of the silos. And then out of that, only 50% make re-entry. And then out of those, only about 25% of the missiles from the original launch would actually hit the target and explode. The rest would either go off target or wouldn't explode. And many of the Russian nuclear capability missiles would be duds, complete failures, or have just been, they packed the nose cone full of radioactive material because they don't have enough nuclear material to maintain a nuclear bomb. They don't have the technical expertise or the resources to do that. So if Russia has 8,000 missiles or bombs, nuclear bombs, and that's including Russian subs, if only 20% of them get through, you got 1,600 missiles. That's still enough. But if we've got 6,000 nuclear weapons and 90% of those get through, it's the end of Russia. All of Russia would be destroyed. So that was what Trump was supposed to do. Bring the goods home for Russia. And that's what he did. That's why the classified documents aren't talked about as much now, is because how sensitive they were.
The Justice Department has unsealed the indictment filed against former President Donald Trump. It outlines the government's case and the criminal counts Trump now faces.
Yeah, it comes as sources tell ABC News that a Trump aide is also facing a federal indictment in the Mar-a-Lago documents investigation. ABC's Justin Finch has more.
The Justice Department laying out its argument against former President Donald Trump and his aide Walt Nauta in a 49-page indictment.
And I invite everyone to read it in full, to understand the scope and the gravity of the crimes charged.
The charges, 37 criminal counts in total, including 31 counts of willful retention of national defense information, 1 count of conspiracy to obstruct justice, and 1 count of scheme to conceal. The indictment stems from the grand jury probe into Trump's alleged mishandling of classified documents and efforts to hamper their return to the government.
When they talk about scheme to conceal, they have him on videotape and texting an aide to go in and remove documents so the FBI can't find them once he's found out they're looking for them.
In accordance with the law. The unsealed indictment includes images of places where Trump kept classified documents, including a bathroom and bedrooms. The dispute resulting in an FBI...
Absolute disgrace. If any of us, I was in the military, and if any of us had just one of those documents, much less boxes and boxes of documents, okay? You know, I remember in the military, any military document, whether classified or unclassified, confidential, whatever, if you took any document unauthorized outside of the base, you could go to jail. And it wouldn't have to be classified. It could just be, you know, a list of names of commanders of the base or in your unit, okay? Which wouldn't have to be classified. If it was found that you had that document on your person or just in your bag on the base, you could go to jail. Because all documents, all military documents are confidential, and unauthorized persons are not allowed to see them, even if they aren't classified or top secret. So I don't understand why Trump isn't sitting in a prison right now. Because if it was you or me with just one of these documents, we would be in chains and not be let out until we went to trial, and we wouldn't get out of prison. And with this amount of documents, we wouldn't ever see the light of day. We would be like Pollard. 30, 40 years from now, we might get out of prison. But because it's Trump, he gets a pass.
Documents, including a bathroom and bedrooms. The dispute resulting in an FBI search of Trump's Mar-a-Lago home last year.
We have one set of laws in this country, and they apply to everyone.
In New Jersey, the first new images of the former president seen golfing at his private club hours after his federal indictment in the special counsel records investigation. And on his social media platform, Trump defending his aide, Walt Nauta, who is also being indicted. Trump accusing the Justice Department of trying to destroy Nauta's life and also insisting he's done nothing wrong.
I'm innocent, and we will prove that very, very soundly and hopefully very quickly.
Trump has been ordered to appear for arraignment Tuesday in a Miami federal court, where Trump-appointed District Judge Eileen Cannon is assigned to preside, at least for now. Justin Finch, ABC News, Washington.
So, I'll just make it really clear.
And efforts to hamper their return includes images of places where
Trump is a traitor. In the old days, they would have taken traitors out and hung them or shot them. But because Trump has money and power, and the Republican Party has been so compromised that it can't see reality, or the truth, he gets a pass. And the thing that's, we used to think that American democracy was so great and that we couldn't be manipulated, we couldn't be fooled, we couldn't be turned against each other, but we were wrong. We have been manipulated. We have been fooled. We have been brought down a notch, or 2 or 3 or 4. So I'll repeat again. How it began, Trump was compromised. How it went through, Trump sold out our country to our enemies. How it ended, Trump gave away our nuclear secrets to our enemies, and I'll tell you what that means, that if a god-awful nuclear war ever occurred, instead of, because Putin knows that only 25% of his damn missiles will get through, so instead of 5 million, 10 million Americans being killed in the initial onslaught, 50, 100 million Americans will now be killed, because with these documents, they're able to catch us with our pants down. And if you know every single plan that your enemy has, there's not much options or wiggle room to come up with something new, because you know all the options. So we have very little wiggle room to do something new that the Russians don't know about because of Traitor Trump. So what that means is that we could wake up one morning and the news media says every city in the United States has been struck by nuclear weapons, over 100. They caught us with our pants down. Our missiles are being launched to counterattack Russia. But meanwhile, 50 to 100 million Americans have been murdered and killed, all because Trump, our former president, betrayed America and brought us down as a country. Trump is a traitor. There's no way around it. I don't care about whether Trump tried to commit voter fraud and all the other charges, rape women, that's bad enough. But when you compromise 100 million Americans going to be dead because of Trump, he's a traitor. So I'm going to end here. That let's make a democracy and freedom great again. Let's send a message to Traitor Trump that Trump must go to prison, that Putin must be overthrown and Russia free, that China must be overthrown and free, that Iran must be overthrown and free, that North Korea must be overthrown and free, that Hamas and Hezbollah must be destroyed. And if we don't do these things, our free and democratic world will not survive and be destroyed. Good night.